Hello and welcome to this first Mythconceptions podcast from NET English. Now the basic idea of these is that I'm going to explore some common myths and misconceptions regarding the literary texts that we study, and we'll explain why those ideas are either wrong or why they're limited, or equally why it's all a bit more complicated than perhaps it seems. Now today we're going to look at possibly the most common misconception relating to the play Macbeth, and that's some kind of variation on the following. First of all, that Lady Macbeth didn't have children. Secondly, that Lady Macbeth and Macbeth did have children, but that the baby died. Or thirdly, that Lady Macbeth killed her baby. So let's start with a bit of history. So Shakespeare based the story of Macbeth in the play on a popular history of the time called Holinshed's Chronicles, and that was published in 1577. Now, Macbeth was a real king of Scotland, and he died in about 1057, although he was probably called, and I'm going to anglicise this, Macbeth MacFinlay. Now, Macbeth was married to someone called Gruach. However, Macbeth wasn't Gruach's first husband. She'd been married before. Now, historically, Macbeth probably killed her first husband and about 50 of his men by burning them alive in revenge for probably them killing Macbeth's father. Now, you don't need to know that. It's just interesting. What is relevant is that Gruach and her first husband had a son called Lulach. Now, Macbeth himself never had children, but he seems to have more or less adopted Gruach's son Lulach as kind of his own. Now what that means is that Macbeth never had children, but Lady Macbeth did. So what does any of this have to do with the play? Well, it's really clear that Lady Macbeth has children in the play. In Act 1 Scene 7, she comments that she's given suck, meaning that she's breastfed a baby. She also says that she knows how tender it is to love the babe that milks me, so she's breastfed a baby that she loved. Now, it's not medically impossible for someone to produce milk without being pregnant, but from the point of view of a Shakespearean audience, the two would be seen as more or less inextricably interwoven. Essentially, that women who have had babies produce breast milk. Now, more than that, she loved the baby, which suggests that it's her own. So Lady Macbeth, historically, had a baby, and the play seems to very strongly suggest, if not openly state, that she's had a baby. Now she does then say that she would, while it was smiling in my face, have plucked my nipple from his boneless gums and dashed the brains out, had I also sworn as you. Now notice that she says she would, not that she did. She's not saying this is something that she's done, but that she'd be so ashamed to be like Macbeth that she would rather have killed her own baby than be like him. Now nothing here suggests the baby has died, and nothing here suggests that she killed the baby. So, did the baby die? Now this one's a bit more ambiguous, and remember that Shakespeare isn't trying to write something that's historically accurate. It's a play, so it's not as simple as going with the history. After all, in real life, Duncan, for example, died in battle and he wasn't an old man. In the play, though, he's an old man and he's murdered. Now, obviously, the child doesn't appear in the play. However, neither does it ever say anywhere in the play that the child has died. Now, it's easy to get confused. Lady Macbeth brings up milk and fertility numerous times, and Macbeth makes clear in references in Act 3 Scene 1, for example, to things like his barren sceptre and his fruitless crown, that he hasn't had children. There's also that wider idea in the play of fertility being linked to divine approval, and the flip side of that being that betrayal and usurpation are linked to sterility. It's why Macbeth is always linked to death and sterility, whereas characters such as Duncan, Banquo and Malcolm are linked to growth and fertility. So think, for example, of the seed of Banquo in Act 3 Scene 1, or of Duncan talking about beginning to plant thee back in Act 1. It's also why we get comments from Macduff, for example, saying that Macbeth has no children in Act 4 Scene 3. That's probably partially why this interpretation is quite pervasive. It seems to fit. Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, either not having children or having lost their children, fits with the idea of them as being about selfishness, about death, about sterility. It's presumably also why the 2015 film version with Michael Fassbender and Marion Cotillard started with their child's funeral. So essentially, Shakespeare has left this bit open and ambiguous. So to summarise, historically, Lady Macbeth had children, but Macbeth didn't. Shakespeare knew this. In the play, Lady Macbeth talks about having breastfed a baby, presumably her own. In the play, Lady Macbeth says she would have killed her baby, not that she did. Historically, the child lived, grew up, and in fact later became king, briefly, and nothing in the play ever references Macbeth and Lady Macbeth having lost a child, although neither does Shakespeare ever present the child as still being around or alive. So, 1. Lady Macbeth didn't have children. Wrong. 2. Lady Macbeth and Macbeth did have children, but the baby died. Ambiguous. Wrong historically, but does make some thematic and symbolic sense. 3. Lady Macbeth killed her baby. Wrong. And there we have it. And hopefully that makes sense. Now, as ever, it's worth testing interpretations by rereading the text, talking to people about things, reading about the text, listening to things about the text. It's also worth exploring interpretations from the point of view of how much or to what extent, rather than simply assuming things to be yes or no. That said, in terms of today's mythconceptions, these are definitely far, far more incorrect than they are correct, even though they are thematically interesting. And there we have it. Thank you very much for your time today. Thank you for listening, and hopefully you'll listen to some more of these in the future. Take care.